Dear learners, welcome to this session. In the previous session, I discussed about the meaning of rites of passage. I also described the pregnancy and childbirth rites among tribals in India. In today's session, I will explain the puberty and initiation rites and marriage and funeral rites among the tribes in India. Let us start with puberty and initiation rites. Initiation rites are usually performed when girls and boys attain physical puberty. These initiation rites are performed to initiate the boys and girls into the world of adulthood. Among the Kolam tribe of Andhra Pradesh, at the time of first menstruation, no specific rites and rituals are observed, but the girl is considered as unclean and impure. Soon after menstruation, the girl takes bath in a nearby stream. In case she menstruates outside the village, a temporary hut is constructed for her. If she menstruates inside her own house, she has to sit in a corner of the house. She should not touch others. She sleeps on the floor and eats in leaf plates. She should not even touch the house. If she touches the walls of the house, the parents think that some misfortune would happen to them, and they rebuild the house. Even utensils and other household articles are sold and new articles are bought. The menstruating woman is strictly prohibited from moving in the house and entering from the front door. The Kolams believe that if menstruating women do not follow strictly all these taboos, the members of the family may be eaten by the tiger when they go to the forest. She takes bath and washes her clothes in the nearby stream. When the menstruation stops, she is permitted to enter the house. After being cleaned, she performs her household duties. Initiation ceremony is a unique and distinct social institution among the Kolams tribe. The initiation ceremony is solemnized in order to recognize socially a boy as an adult and to lift certain taboos imposed on them earlier. This ritual is usually observed in the month of Pola or July prior to full moon day. Every male member between 15 to 18 years of age has to undergo this ceremony before marriage. Otherwise, one is not eligible for marriage and he is also not eligible to accept sacred food offered at shrines of their deities during festivals or rituals. Before this ceremony, a boy is given the status of that of a girl, and restrictions generally imposed on a girl with regard to eating of ceremonial food is imposed. All the Kolams of the settlement meet and decide the day for celebration of the ritual in consultation with the village priest. On this day, the boy, who has to be initiated, is dressed like a woman with sari and other ornaments. He is accompanied by his own brother-in-law and village priest and visits the village deity. They carry along with them bread made of jowar or wheat flour, roasted cakes made of black gram, and a cock. The number of pairs of cakes should be equal to the number of divine spirits of his fratry. All these offerings are placed before the village deity, and immediately the boy and brother-in-law turn back. The village priest worships the village deity and sacrifices the cock. After completion of the rituals and prayers, the boy and his brother-in-law turn towards the shrine and offer their prayers. Then the priest offers food to the boy and then they return to the village. Only after this ritual, the boy is recognized as an adult member and he is eligible to accept sacred food offered to gods and goddesses. Eating of sacred food also makes them eligible to marry. Unless this initiation ceremony is observed, eating of sacred food or marriage celebrations are tabooed. It is significant to note that women folk are not eligible to eat the sacred food offered ritually to gods and goddesses till the stoppage of menopause. After this period, the women folk are entitled to eat sacred food offered to gods and goddesses. Among the Korwa tribe of Chotanagpur region in Bihar, girls who are menstruating must sit apart from the other persons at the time of eating. They should not jump, should not eat cold drinks or pickles, should not eat cold things or pickles. Menstruating women remain in isolation. They enter into the house or leave the house only by an outer room of every house, which has one small door which opens to the backside of the house, and never by the main entrance. If there is no other female member in the family, the husband cooks the food. They are not to visit sacred places. After 4 days, they go to the nearby stream to take bath for purification. They also wash their hair and clothes. The Cholanaikans tribe are found in the Nilamdar valley in Malappuram of Nilgiri district in Tamil Nadu. This tribe perform rites of separation for girls who are menstruating. The menstruating girls are secluded for 4 days in one corner of the cave. During this period, the woman is considered to be unclean. Let us now discuss marriage rites. Marriage constitutes an important transition from one social category to another because for at least one of the spouses it involves a change of family, clan, village or tribe. Sometimes the newly married couple even establish residence in a new house. The change of residence is marked in the ceremonies by rites of separation, always primarily focusing on territorial passage, as the newly married woman almost all the time permanently shift from her own parental house to her husband's house. Furthermore, because of the number and importance of groups affected by the social union of two of their members, it is natural that the period of transition should take an considerable importance. This is a period commonly called the betrothal. Among a great number of people, it consists of a special and autonomous part of the marriage ceremonies. This includes rites of separation and transition and terminating with rites. This ensures either a preliminary incorporation into the new environment or a separation from an autonomous transition period. Then comes the rites of marriage, which consist chiefly of rites of permanent incorporation into the new environment. Among the Kabuis tribe of northeast India, wedding ceremony is solemnized at the residence of the bridegroom. In the early morning of the day, an omen taking ritual called Guak Pai Jaume is performed, in which a healthy pig on behalf of the bride is offered to the supreme god. This ritual is performed at the residence of the bride. The spleen of the victim is examined by the present elders in search of good indicators. Guak Pai Jaume literally means observation of the pig's spleen. Guak is pig, Pai is spleen, and Jaume is to observe. The pig is roasted and cut into small pieces and then it is boiled. This boiled meat will be taken to the groom's house. After morning food is over, the bride will take bath and put on traditional marriage dress and costume. She will be helped by her sister-in-laws of the family in dressing. Then she, along with her companions, will start the journey for her final destination, which symbolizes that she is separated from her family and her village. When the bride, along with her companions, arrives at the residence of the groom, the bride is warmly received by her mother in law, and a leaf cup of drink is offered, which she drinks it. It is called Joy Dui Mei. Before she enters the house, she is purified by contacting the smoke of kham that brings her in as free as possible of the evil that may be adhering to her. Then she will enter the house by crossing the door with her right foot, which symbolizes that the bride is incorporated into the new environment. Finally, the marriage ceremony Langdham Halak is performed, in which a fowl, a ginger, and a hoe are offered to the Supreme God with singing of religious hymns. Among the Khond tribe of southern India, when agreement between the families has been reached, the girl is dressed in a red blanket and carried to the groom's village by her maternal uncle in the company of the young woman of her village. The retinue carries gifts for the groom, who stands in the road, accompanied by young boys from his village armed with bamboo sticks. The women attack the young men, hitting them with sticks, stones, and clods of earth, and the boys defend themselves with their sticks. Bit by bit, they all approach the village, and when they reach it, the fighting stops. The groom's uncle takes the bride and carries her into the groom's house. This fighting is by no means child's play, and the men are sometimes seriously injured. After the bride has reached the village, there is a communal meal at the groom's expense. Among the Bhotia who inhabit Sikkim, the following ceremonies take place during marriage. Astrologers determine whether the projected marriage will be favorable. Uncles of the girl and the boy act as go-betweens and receive presents of money. They meet in the boy's house and then go with gifts to the girls to ask for her in marriage. If the gifts they bought are accepted, the matter is concluded and the amount of the dowry is decided upon. The intermediaries are given a feast, and there are prayers to invoke blessings upon the bride and the groom. After the last two ceremonies, which are obviously rites of incorporation of the two families, the boy and the girl may see each other in complete freedom. A year later comes the Nain ceremony. It is a meal at the expense of the boy's parents and attended by all relatives on both sides. The bride price is paid at this time. A year after the Nain, the Changthong ceremony is held. An astrologer is called upon to determine a favorable date for the bride's departure from her parents' home. Those arrangements which would be auspicious are also decided in detail. A great celebration to which lamas are invited is organized. Two men at that moment, called thieves, force their way into the village and in the house, and a fight is simulated. They are supposed to steal the girl. The thieves are beaten and half-cooked meat is thrown into their mouths. They may escape this treatment by giving money to the bride's guardians. 2 days later, the thieves are honored and named the happy strategists. Guests give presents to the bride and to her parents. The retinue departs with rejoicing. The boy's mother and father go to meet the retinue and take them to their home. There are celebrations for 2 or 3 days. The girl and her relatives return home. A year later, the Palak ceremony is held. At this time, the parents give the bride her dowry, which is double the amount that has been paid for her, and she is escorted to the boy's home. This time she remains permanently. Thus, the betrothal and marriage ceremonies among the Bhotia last at least 3 years. Rites of incorporation are the most prominent during marriage, as the married girl enters a new household where she establishes new relations with her groom families, and relatives. Let us now discuss the funeral rites among the tribes in India. Death separates the deceased from their statuses of living parent, spouse, or co worker. The period of preparing the dead for burial or cremation moves them into a transitional phase when they are neither what they have been nor yet what they will become. Such moments of transition often involve uncertainty and potential danger. The ritual impurity of the corpse derives from its inability to respond to others, yet is still present in their everyday routines. Accordingly, people pay their respects to the dead, marking their former identity with them, express sorrow for the bereaved, and by doing so, reaffirm their continuing relationship with them. Robert Hertz argues that funeral rites involve a kind of parallel process in which the decay of the dead reflects the path of grief in the bereaved. Bereavement involves both the social change of status of people, from, say, being a wife to being a widow, from being a child to being an orphan, or from being a subordinate adult to becoming the head of the family. It also involves psychological changes of identity associated with such shifts. Human beings become dependent upon each other, and in a sense, each identity is made up of elements of other people's influence. People become part of each other, and thus, when one dies, a portion of oneself perishes as well. Some theories of grief discuss this in terms of attachment and interpret bereavement as the loss that follows when attachments are removed. Sometimes funeral rites exist to try to get such spiritual forces finally to leave the world of the living and get on with their future destiny. At its most extreme, rites of exorcism serve to banish the dead or other supernatural entities and prevent them from influencing the living. In terms of identity, this time the identity of the living, ghosts, and spirits perhaps also include vivid dreams of the dead. All reflect the individual experience of a bereaved person who is still, psychologically speaking, caught up with the identity of the deceased person. Physical death has also been widely employed as an idiom to describe the leaving of an old status and the entry into a new one. In the case of death befalling on an Orang family, the lineage members have some obligations. They are those who are caught in between the realm of an unintended state. They are considered potentially dangerous entities or phenomena as they symbolize radical change that challenges the social life set up against such change. The fear of ghosts or spirits, for example, can be related to both the dimensions of status and identity. In terms of status, ghosts and spirits can be seen as the dead who have not been successfully moved from their place in this world to that of the next. Gonds cremate or bury their dead. Children, unmarried persons, and individuals dying an inauspicious death, for example in an epidemic, are buried without much ceremony. Gonds believe humans have a life force and a spirit. On death, the life force is reincarnated into another earthly existence, but the spirit remains in the other world. Gonds perform death rituals to help the spirit move into the other world and to ease its acceptance by other clan spirits. This rite, known as Karun, must be done to fulfill an obligation to the deceased. Memorial pillars honor the dead. Gonds believe ancestral spirits watch over the living, punish offenders, and guard Gond communities. Among the Majwar, Manjhi, Manjhiya, a small mixed tribe who have apparently originated from the Gonds, Mundas, and Kawars, when the man is at the point of death, they place a little cooked rice and curd in his mouth so that he may not go hungry to the other world, in view of the fact that he has probably eaten very little during his illness. Some cotton and rice are also placed near the head of the corpse in the grave so that he may have food and clothing in the next world. Mourning is observed for 5 days, and at the end of this period, the mourners should have their hair cut, but if they cannot get it done on this day, the rite may be performed on the same day in the following year. Among the Kol tribe of India, the funeral rites takes place in the following way. Immediately after death, the corpse is placed on the ground so that the soul should more easily find its way to the home of the dead, which is under the earth. The corpse is washed and painted yellow to chase away evil spirits who would stop the soul on its journey. For the same purpose, the assembled relatives and neighbors utter pitiable cries. The corpse is placed on a scaffold with the feet facing forward, so that the soul should not find the way back to the hut, and for the same reason, the procession travels by detours. The cortege must not include either children or girls. The women cry, the men are silent. Each man carries a piece of dry wood to throw on the pyre. Rice and the tools of the deceased sex are placed there, and in the mouth of the corpse there are rice cakes and silver coins for the journey, since the soul retains a shadow of the body. The women leave and the pyre is lighted. The litter is also burned to prevent the deceased's return. The men gather the calcified bones, place them in a pot, and bring the pot back to the deceased's house, where it is hung from a post. Grains of rice are strewn along the route, and the food is placed in front of the door, so that the deceased, should he return in spite of all precautions, will have something to eat without harming anyone. All the deceased's utensils are carried far away because they have become impure and because the deceased may be hidden in them. The house is purified by a consecrated meal. After a certain time, the ceremony of betrothal or union of the deceased with the population of the lower world is performed. A marriage retinue with music, etc., goes to the village from which the deceased and his ancestors have originated. The pot containing the bones of the deceased is deposited in a small ditch, above which a stone is erected. On their return, the participants must bathe. Among the Lushai tribe of northeast India, funeral rites takes place as follows. The deceased is dressed in his best clothes and tied in a sitting position on a scaffold of bamboo, while next to him are placed the tools and weapons of his sex. A pig, goat, and a dog are killed, and all the relatives, friends, and neighbors divide the meat. The deceased is also given food and drink. At nightfall, he is placed in a grave dug right next to the house. His nearest relative says goodbye and asks him to prepare everything for those who will come and join him. The soul, accompanied by those of the pig, the goat, and the dog, without whom it would not find its way to the land of Mithikua, where life is hard and painful. But if the deceased has killed men or animals on the hunt, or if he has given feast to the whole village, he goes to a pleasant country on the other side of the river, where he feasts continuously. Since women can neither fight nor hunt nor give feasts, they cannot go to this beautiful country unless their husbands take them there. After a certain time, the soul leaves one or the other of these regions and returns to earth in the form of a hornet. Another lapse of time happens, it is transformed into water and evaporates in the form of dew. And if dewdrops fall on a man, that man will beget a child who will be a reincarnation of the deceased. Rites of separation are the most prominent in funeral rites as the deceased is separated physically from the other members of the society. In this section, you learned about the rites of marriage and funeral. To conclude, it may be said that rites of passage have three phases: separation, transition, and reincorporation. The transition liminal phase is the period between states during which one has left one place or state but hasn't yet entered or joined the next. In the third phase, reaggregation or reincorporation, the passage is consummated, the ritual subject. Having completed the rite and assumed their new identity, one re-enters society with one's new status. Reincorporation is characterized by elaborate rituals and ceremonies. In this session, I have explained the puberty and initiation rites and marriage and funeral rites among the tribes in India. Thank you.